So today I'm gonna rank all of the items in Scrap Mechanic Survival. So first we have the air conditioner. Now people like to use it a lot for its durability, but in my opinion the problem is if a bot actually destroys it, the whole thing is gone. But if you use individual blocks, they mostly just destroy 1 or 2 blocks. So I think the item is okay. Then we have the aluminium block. Now I think this block is used in the warehouse. I mean, you can't craft it yourself, which is really sad because I really like the look of it. For some reason it's really heavy for aluminium, but in my opinion it still looks really good, so I'm putting it in good tier. Then we have these 2 antennas. Well, I think they look pretty neat, so they can go on the same tier as the aluminium block. Now, armored glass block is just pretty amazing because it's glass, but it also doesn't get destroyed every time. I mean, durability is 4. It's even higher than wood, so this is just a really good block. And by really good, I mean best, of course. The arrow sign is great for building, but we can't really craft it, so I'm just putting this in good tier. Now, do we really need to talk about the duck? This is such an essential part of Scrap Mechanic. This is definitely god tier. The banana box doesn't really look as good anymore, and like the durability is 1, so you can easily destroy it. So I think the banana box and also like the onion box and so on are all just pretty useless. Like they are probably from a time when they didn't have the crates that we have nowadays, so... But the banana itself is just pretty damn cool, just like the seeds, because, well, I think the seeds are better than the banana because this gives me infinite bananas and the banana is just one thing I can eat. Barrier block. We can craft it, it looks pretty cool, so it's definitely good block. Well, the bathroom stall door is pretty okay, but you can't really get it from the warehouse and it's always open. It's kinda creepy, you know? I mean, effectively that makes it completely useless. Well, I don't think we need to say much about the bathtub. I mean, you can use them for hot tub streaming in Scrap Mechanic. Like, yeah, they're pretty cool blocks. Now, the battery container has a really cool design in my opinion. And of course, it's also really useful for transporting a lot of batteries. So I do really like it, but batteries themselves are kinda expensive. So I think they're just good tier. Oh, the beacon. It's just so useful to be able to set waypoints. We can like even customize the color of our waypoint to make it a little rock face. And if I actually had the logbook, I can even see the distance to each beacon. Like, that thing is really useful. Now, the bearing, I'm so tempted to put this on like a lower tier. Because with physics, it's sometimes not that great, but it's such an iconic thing for Scrap Mechanic. And not having it would mean not being able to move parts at all, so yeah, that's just awesome. Beeswax is kinda annoying to get. Like, I really wish we could automate it somehow, so that's why I'm just putting it in okay tier. I mean, you can destroy it with a spud gun, and then you could use a vacuum pump to suck up the beeswax, but it's kinda like the pigment flowers, it's just not really easy to farm. Well, the Farmbot sign is a little simple, but I think it's still pretty okay. Well, and the big pot still looks interesting. Like, it definitely fits the Scrap Mechanic style. And I mean, it's even craftable. But I think my favorite plants are the potted wine plant, potted blooming cactus, and potted blue flower. So I'm gonna move all of these plants in good tier, and the other plants are kinda okay. Next up, we have the big wheel. And I mean, yeah, it's freaking round, it's big, it drives, it's pretty good. Yeah, alright, I think this can go into best tier. The blueberry actually gives you 30 thirst and 30 hunger, which is exceptional for this class of crop. Like, the orange or banana only do 55 points in total, and this is 60 points, so it's a pretty good crop to grow, you know? The brick block looks pretty cool in my opinion as well. Now, I don't really like broccoli as much, because you need to raid an entire warehouse to get it, so I'm just putting it at good tier. Bubble plastic is a really epic block because it's really useful, it's lightweight, it's amazing for building rafts or anything on the water. And it's also super cheap, so definitely one of the best blocks in Scrap Mechanic. Now, the button is also, I mean, it's a button, you know, who doesn't like pressing buttons? Also, if you ever stared at the masculine mechanic on the calendar, he's just so damn cool to look at. So, like, it's such a cool design. Like, I really like that thing. Cardboard block is really good for glow bugs. It's also really cheap to get, so, like, most of my giant staircase is built out of this block, so one of the best blocks, definitely. Now, the carpet block looks pretty good, but it's kinda expensive to craft. So it's just good for me, just like the carrot, because I usually end up getting more thirsty than hungry, so I usually prefer the tomatoes. Well, I honestly think the design on the caution automated facilities sign could be a little better. And you know, there's just better signs. So it's just okay from me. Now I think these are challenge blocks. Well, I never play challenge mode, so they're all pretty useless for me. Oh, this one is a chemical bucket. I mean, a recipe for chemicals uses it, but usually you're so much better off using a pump for it. And unlike water, I can't use it to splash bots with, so it doesn't really feel that useful to me. Chemicals, it's of course one of the best items, and the chemical container is also pretty okay. The chest is literally the best item to store items with, mostly just because it's so cheap to craft and doesn't require circuit boards and component kits like the large chest does, so I usually use this for mass storage. So that's best tier. Then we have the circuit board. Usually you end up having way too many circuit boards, so I'm just putting this in good tier. But the component kit is god tier, no matter what you want to craft in this game. Or if you want to upgrade your engine, everything in this game needs component kits. Can't wait until they add microtransactions for them. Well, maybe that's gonna be another April Fool's. Well, not only is the concave wedge part of the wedge gang, but it's also concave, so like, it's a freaking curve in this game. But sadly, they don't even allow us to craft it. Still one of the best blocks in my opinion. Then we have a lot of concrete blocks. Well, concrete is kinda heavy, but also very durable. So it's a pretty good block for base defense, and concrete block 3 is the heaviest block in the game, which makes it really useful for stuff that needs to be heavy, like your mom. But yeah, I think concrete 2 is just kinda average, so it's just good tier, sitting there all alone. There's also the concrete slab, but you can't really craft it, so I mean, the connect tool obviously is just one of the best items if you want to build anything. I like the construction zone sign a lot more, but it's not my favorite sign yet. Still pretty good though. Now, controllers give you infinite free energy, which they are freaking broken. Like, once we get the power generator in the next update, or well, when chapter 2 finally releases, they might be even more broken. Like, corn is really good because it gives you infinite milk, and milk is very good food at the beginning of the game. Well, but where do I find cotton? Well, it's the next item on the list, but we all knew that problem. It's kinda annoying to get. So yeah, that's why I'm putting it in good tier. Oh, then there's cracked concrete, but you can't really craft the block, so that's kinda sad. The craft bot with all of its animations is just really cool in my opinion. Well, it's a little slow to craft stuff sometimes, but you can place chests on both sides to like automate crafting. It's super dang useful. Just gobbles up a lot of component kits. So, yep, one of the best spots in the game. Oil is basically free real estate in this game. Well, okay, it's not exactly god tier. Well, the cucumber box is a little weird, so that goes right into OK tier 2. Now, the danger sign and the do not enter sign, all pretty cool to build with as well. The diamond plate block is really cool in my opinion, and like, it's also craftable from metal blocks 1 for free. So definitely one of the good blocks in this game. The satellite dishes are okay, but since they are one of the few round items in this game, they are like great for building balls and stuff. I mean, only the part that doesn't have the thing on it for holding, I don't know how it really works. Oh, I think you stick the antenna on top of that, right? Well, we don't talk about the drill. Well, I'm just putting it at good tier, because the saw blade, in my opinion, is much better. Because mining sometimes feels so inconsistent, because you're literally slamming the drill into a rock, but somehow it's not breaking. Like, I honestly prefer cutting trees. The driver saddle and seat are both just really essential to play the game. The duct vent pieces are really paintable, I mean at least some of them, but they also look really cool in my opinion. So I'm putting most of them on good tier, but these two are best tier, because you can paint these really well. I honestly prefer the electric engine over the gas engine. Since it's not as loud, I have more control over the speed, and I can brake much easier as well. Now in survival, of course, you get oil much easier than batteries. Well, but these have the creative texture, so I think it's alright. Ember is pretty cool, but once you like cleared an entire burnt forest out of ember, it gets kinda annoying to find that stuff, so I'm just putting it in OK tier. Would be cool if we can regrow actual trees and somehow burn them to get ember. The exit sign is pretty good. the extruded metal block, one of my favorite building blocks, because it looks cool and also is not too expensive to craft. The falling object sign is okay, but I don't really find myself using it as much as the other signs. Now, Farmbots are really interesting creatures. Like, they are actually drilling the ground sometimes. They have a diverse attack set with the scythe and the chemical cannon. So there's a lot of design that went into the farm bot, which makes it at least the most interesting bot. But I think that's still just best tier. Now, fertilizer, it makes your plants grow faster, but you can't really automate it as much. So it's really only useful early game. Like late game, you like never use it, so nah, it's not that great. The fresh neon sign looks really cool in my opinion. But yeah, it's also really destructible, and you can't craft it either. But still definitely one of my favorite signs. If you compare the fridge to a chest, it's not like really cheaper to craft. And the stats of the fridge are much worse than the stats of the chest. It has the same capacity as a normal chest, but you can only put food inside of it. So it's only really useful for aesthetics, because otherwise just get a normal chest, you know, you can later put other stuff into it as well. So it's okay, I think. The fuse box looks alright, but you can't really obtain it in survival. So it's pretty okay. Now the gas container, yep, is about as good as the battery container, but gas is a lot more useful than batteries. Well, I guess the giant pipe bracer can sort of work as a wheel replacement. I mean, actually it works quite well as a wheel. That might make it a little bit more interesting, but I'm not really using these parts as much. Same kinda goes for the giant pipes, because they're just so big. Then you can't even go inside of them. I mean, the glass block is clearly, really useful. I mean, the towel block looks alright, but I think the normal glass is still better just because it's so clear. Now, glow bugs are just super cute, and I don't think I know anyone who doesn't like them. Oh, maybe the farmbot doesn't like him, now that I'm thinking about it. But yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite animals in this game. I mean, glow poop is also alright, just like the glow sticks, which are really useful to light up stuff when it's getting dark, because it's getting really dark in this game. Well, did I mention that I hate clam diving? But yeah, it's just really annoying to collect clams. I mean, the glue is alright though, once you've actually done all the clam diving. I mean, the grass container is at least a way for mechanics to touch grass, so it adds the green stuff to your builds quite well. Now, toad bots and hay bots are good in my opinion, but you always end up with so many toad bot heads in your world, it's so annoying. And the hay bots drop the scrap metal, which you need to refine, which takes forever. So these are kind of the drawbacks here. And also the reason why the green toad bot head should be deleted now. It's so annoying that they fly all over the place. You'll never get rid of them. They take a whole inventory slot every single time. Like, the other toad bot heads are just fine. Like, they're actually fun for music creations. This hard work pays off sign is definitely one of my favorites. It just looks so cool. So that's definitely a good item in my mind. The headlight, well, it's pretty good, but the horn to this day is still broken. I cannot interact with it. 2 years after survival release, like, oh my god, that's pretty much making it useless. Then we have all of these beams, which are pretty cool for building stuff, and you can also paint them really well, so I kinda like these parts. Then there's the insulation block. Well, it's only used in the warehouse. Yeah, I don't really like this block. I think it's pretty much just useless. The large chest is more expensive, but has pipe connections, and you can actually use it as a T-pipe. Like, and really expensive T-pipe, but it works. Sort of, so it has its uses. Though for storage I would still use the small chest, because it's a lot cheaper. Then we have the explosives, which, I mean, I guess this is fairly obvious. Now I'm putting the large explosive only in best tier, and the small explosive in god tier, because like, you can freaking destroy blocks. And they're also really good to destroy bots. Like, I think it's just 2 small explosives to kill an entire farm bot. Like, that is so strong. You can have epic battles in creative or cut trees or rocks with explosives. Which, okay, that was kinda underwhelming, but I think you get my point. Then there's the large warehouse ramp, and yeah, basically these blocks are just wedges. And since we all are part of the wedge gang, I don't think I really need to say more about this. Problem still is we cannot craft them, so that's kinda sad. Then we have large pipes, but I don't really like using them either, cause I don't know, I'm not really a pipe person. Now, the windows are kind of cool to, you know, actually see the outside. But I think the windshields are even better, cause like, it gives you a clear view when you're driving or so. And I mean, at least all of these are craftable as well. Then there's the support frame thing. Yeah, I don't really use that thing, so I guess it exists. Well, the tanks are pretty okay building parts, and they can also sorta work as a wheel if you need to, though they have even less friction than the wheels already have. The license plate, though, is definitely one of the best blocks, cause, you know, if you have a car, you want a license plate. Well, the lift, of course, is the most overpowered item in all of Scrap Mechanic. I mean, yeah, like, you can clone stuff with it in Creative, unflip your cars and stuff. It's such an essential tool. You can't play Scrap Mechanic without it, really. Now, the locker looks alright, so it's good for building. You can even store a few items in it. But yeah, it's not craftable, so you can only get that many of them. But you know, since it has an actual use, it's probably an above average building part. Now, the logic gate. Like, I absolutely love this block. It allows you to automate things in ways that are not possible otherwise. But yeah, you know, I'm kind of a tech person. I'm into programming and all of it. Of course, I really love this thing. I built whole arcade machines with this block. Like, I cannot not put it in God tier. Well, I don't really like the door from the crashed spaceship. The mannequin boot and hand are pretty cool, so I'm gonna put both of them in the good tier. Then we have the master battery. I mean, it's indestructible and quite heavy, but there's only 3 in the entire survival world, and you're gonna need 1 of them at least. So it's alright. The mattress is a cool building part, but I think it's definitely showing its age by now, since we've got the respawn bed now. Which, in my opinion, is one of the best items, because you can set your respawn point all the time, you don't need to worry about dying, but it also doesn't have any connections, sadly. Now, the metal blocks are pretty good, but especially metal 3 is pretty expensive. Although it's one of the most durable blocks you have. I think it's even the most durable block. That actually makes it the best block. I mean, one of the best blocks. But the other metal stuff is still okay. Well, then there's these kind of building blocks I don't really use that much. So yeah, I guess they're pretty okay, but you know, nothing special really. The design of the broken microwave is pretty cool, but I think there's only 1 in the entire game you can find, and it only holds 1 item. I still think it's pretty cool though. Oh my god, I zoomed in so much. Oh my god, I think I've never looked at the inside of the mob set. That's so gross. Well, look at it. It has a really weird hitbox. No, you can actually walk on it. Alright. Well, anyway, it adds some detail, so it's alright. The mountable spot gun is really cool. It allows you to build some tanks, battle bots, whatever. You can also use it to kill bots with it. You can even harvest some resources with them, such as like beeswax. And if you put too many of them on your car, you can even use it as your main engine, although that's usually best in creative. You know, it's a really fun and versatile block, so I think that deserves God tier. Why is the refinery bot twice on the list? Well, if there would be the cook bot, that would definitely be God tier, because it's so cute, I guess? The refinery bot, in my opinion, is just really heavy. Just not as much fun to use, I think. Now, the mug is also pretty good. The net block is interesting because you can sorta see through it, and unlike glass, it's actually more durable. And it's also really cheap. That makes it a really good survival block, in my opinion. And by good, I mean best, of course. The screws and nuts are really cool for building things in my opinion, but they have really weird hitboxes. I think I even like the screw as much that it could go into the best tier. Like, it's just really good at adding some detail to your creations. Ah, well, the suspension. Where do we start? I mean, of course it's great for building cars, because you want suspension. But you can also use it for creations, like a reverse piston, because it actually, you know, it contracts, so it's really special. Of course, there's also the suspension glitch. And the suspension mug. And it also starts with sus. Like, I don't think there's anything more I need to say. And then there's the office chair. It looks alright, but one advantage in survival is it has 10 connections by default. So if you ever get close to a warehouse, you can just take one of these with you. And it's basically like a level 5 driver's seat for free. I mean, passenger seat, because you can't really drive with that thing. Yeah, it's especially fun if you use the office chair base, put a bearing on it, and then hop into the chair. But since this is a free level 5 seat, it's definitely one of the best items. I just realized I skipped the sport suspension, but I think it's not as good as the off-road suspension because it's smaller. There's these plant boxes, which even have some instructions on how to use them on them. But the most interesting thing about them is there's an actual QR code on the side. And if you scan it, it leads to this weird image on scrapmechanic.com. So I feel this weird Easter egg makes these plant boxes really interesting. Would have been funnier if it was a rickroll though. Then we have oranges, which are pretty okay crops in my opinion. Paint ammo is pretty good for the paint tool, of course. But it's not that easy to mass produce it. And in general, the paint tool is really cool, you know, actually being able to paint stuff. They really need to make painting a lot of parts easier than, you know, having to click them individually. Like, this takes forever. Well, and as I was talking about paint, pigment flowers are also not that great because, you know, it's just not that easy to get them in like big quantities, at least in my opinion, you know? I would just love it if we could actually grow them like any other plant. Well, the painted wall block can pretty well be painted. But yeah, it has this gross warehouse look to it. So it's alright for the warehouse, but I wouldn't really use this as a building block. The path light block can even be crafted. And it looks alright. And if I change my time to night, it even sorta glows. So it's pretty cool. The pillow and pineapple seeds are also alright. Like, the pillow could be more fluffy. But these pipe pieces though, like, are really useful because it's like a 1x1 cylinder. You can use it to build wheels for trains. Like, that is really useful. Now, the piston is basically like a lift, but small, and we can control it. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can build with pistons, like piston engines, doors, you know, normal stuff. But they are also sometimes really interesting. Like, if you have too many pistons pushing on the same thing, stuff gets really wonky. But any interactive parts that just add so many new possibilities to the game is definitely god tier in my opinion. Well, this is just another warehouse block, so nothing really special in my opinion. Well, oh come on, like these warehouse blocks are pretty much just useless. The plastic block is a lot more decent in my opinion though. Like, I actually really like it as a building block because from all the building blocks in Scrap Mechanic, it's the most plain one, you know, without much of a texture. So you only really have these scratches on here, but you can paint it really easily. So if you need like a really quick green screen, you could just use these blocks. Like, I think I've used them before just for this purpose. I mean, plungers are always funny. Well, potatoes are pretty good cause, you know, for spot guns and stuff. When you can't eat the potatoes directly, well, there's a bunch more net blocks, but they are not as good as the original in my opinion, cause they are not as cheap and you can't really look through the other blocks as much. Well, the radio. It's quite a simple block really, you just turn it on, it plays music, but like, you know, the songs it plays, they just really remind me of old Scrap Mechanic, cause everyone would just put a radio in their car. Like, for me, the radio songs are just really iconic for Scrap Mechanic and stuff, so I just think it's pretty cool. And by cool I mean god tier, of course. The Raft Shark mount is a pretty cool reference to the game Raft, but it's not really that useful as a part. Well, red beeps are a good crop too. Now, red tape bots are very interesting. Just like normal tape bots, I think they have a really interesting design. But yeah, both tape bots are just stupidly overpowered. I mean, they deal 55 damage per hit. Like, that is just way too much in my opinion. So I feel like in a bot tier list, they would be at the bottom. Well, I already had the refinery bot somewhere, but we also got the resource collector, which is pretty good, you know. Just a little heavy sometimes, and you cannot actually go through the block. Although it just really looks like you can walk through it, you know, that's just a little irritating to me. I mean, not even projectiles can go through the giant hole. The rounded frame corner is really hard to get in survival, but it is such a useful building block, because you can actually build balls with it. Well, these balls are kinda heavy, but the collision is great. It definitely gives this part a special position. I mean, there's the restroom block, but that's, you know, again, just another warehouse block. But I think the rusted metal looks a lot cooler. You can also get this in decent quantities in survival. Both the saddle and normal seat are pretty good. I also like the sales sign because on the back it says 2 for 3. So it's kind of what you would expect for like a shady farmer. The sand block is usually just used to make glass. I mean, it has durability of 1, so it's not really that good. The scrap seats have a really interesting look to them. Like, I mean, the models, like, great job on those, but in terms of actual usability, the driver seats takes 4 connections and the normal seat just 2. Compare that to the toilet that is still really cheap. The scrap seat kinda feels like a scam. I mean, the toilet can hold 10 connections, is super cheap and also really funny if you leave the seat. So the scrap driver seat is at least somewhat usable. This one is more or less just a scam, but the toilet is just amazing. The scrap gas engine is really cheap to craft, but as an engine it requires a lot more fuel compared to the other engines. It's not really good for cars and stuff, but if you had infinite gas for example, it's honestly not such a bad thing if you just need to rotate something. Like, it's absolutely fine to make a drill spin for example. You don't really need the engine for that, so it does have its use case, kinda. Well, do I really need to talk about the abomination that's called a scrap wheel? That stuff is totally not round at all. In fact, you're better off walking your way from the crashed ship to the mechanic station than trying to build a car with that thing. To me, this thing is the definition of useless. Scrap wood, stone and metal, all just like essential resources, but I wouldn't really use the blocks for building. The sensor is a really cool part, but I don't think it's quite god tier, because it's just essentially another trigger. The check pieces look cool and stuff, but they have one durability, so they're pretty useless. However, the shack roof is amazing. Not only does it have higher durability, but it also has very little friction. So if you're really smart, you use this to slide around the roads. Which again makes the scrap wheel even more useless if you don't have a car. Like, this is actually really fast. So that definitely deserves to be in the best category. While the other shack pieces are just okay. But the shack light is pretty cool. The shelf parts are alright, but especially the shelf support is such a clean block. Like, if you wanted to build a green screen or something like that, I would use that block. Well, it has a little bit of texture to it, but it's really clean. There's two types of sink. I think they both look alright. Although I really like the Axolot soap on this one. These are like the last signs on the list. The slippery surface sign is pretty cool and can be funny in certain situations. The stop sign is good for, you know, traffic signs, and the skull with the wrenches also looks really good. But my favorite sign is definitely the welcome sign, because if you read closely it says, "You are not welcome." I don't know, I just think it's kind of funny. So place all the others just in the good category, and the welcome sign is one of the best signs in my opinion. Well, and the sledgehammer is such an iconic scrap mechanic thing. Like, scrap mechanic wouldn't be the same game without it. Next we have all these small pipes, and they're all really good because you can build gears with them actually. They don't work perfectly, but you can build a lot with these small pipes. Well, there's some support parts like this. I think they're alright, you know, but nothing really special. Soil is a necessity to farm in scrap mechanic, but it also picks up the terrain texture, so there's yellow stripes on my soil. No idea why it does it, but yeah, it feels more of like a necessity than a fun tool to use. So these blocks are still left. The spaceship block looks really cool. The spaceship floor is also alright. Not a huge fan of this more worn metal though. Like, it doesn't really look pretty, but I do like the tile block a lot more because, you know, it actually shows you the tiling, so it's a little like easier to build on this. Then we have all the spuds. My favorite is definitely the spud shotgun. It also has a like really creative design with the fryer, where it actually shoots fries. The ammo consumption is higher compared to other spud guns, but I think it has the highest damage output out of all the spud guns, and it's just great if you can just two-hit a haybot. The normal spud gun I think is also still pretty good, cause it's only 4 hits to kill a haybot. It's like very ammo efficient. You have really good range, so I can easily snipe that toadbot here. But yeah, the Gatling is definitely my least favorite. Because it's a Gatling gun, it also has this warm-up time until it starts shooting. And then it consumes a lot of potatoes. It's not super accurate because it has high spread, like, it's more or less medium range. Like, if you actually compare that to the shotgun, well, it's almost as inaccurate as a freaking shotgun. So I feel like this is okay. I never really had much use for the Gatling. The shotgun is almost like god tier. I mean, it is really strong. And the good old spud gun, you know, it's really reliable. Right, looks like we have a bunch more industrial parts over here. They're all pretty okay, I think. I mean, the railing is kind of nice. Yeah, actually, I feel that could be a tier higher. Now, the warehouse ramp is really good because it's a ramp you can actually get in survival somewhat easily. And the wedge, you know, it's a wedge that belongs to the wedge gang. It's one of the best parts in scrap mechanic. I mean, not only that it is a wedge, it's also super paintable. It barely has any texture of its own. Like, when are we finally allowed to craft it in the craft bot? The square mesh block only has a friction of 2. This makes it a really fun block to play around with. You can't craft it in survival though, but I have a lot of fun playing with this in creative. So that's best tier. Now the palette over here is alright, but nothing compared to Sunshake. Like, you all know it, it's my favorite item in the game. Like, ever since I made the ad for Sunshake, I'm all in. So of course I also really like the Sunshake vending machine. I would probably even put this in God tier as well, but sadly you can't actually use it, so it's just one of the best items in the game. Well, a Switch. I mean, it's not a Nintendo Switch, but it's still pretty good. Well, of thruster's also pretty essential, so yeah, that's definitely God tier. Now, I don't think the timer is as essential, but it's still like a really useful item. The toilet paper is also really cool, because if you stick two of them together, we have a paper towel roll. There are building parts in here that I don't think are really that special, so I think I'm gonna yeet all of them just into the okay tier, cause, I mean, they're okay. Nothing you use in your like everyday builds, but they can come in handy from time to time. Well, the handbook. It's an item that our mechanic reads upside down. The info in here is pretty outdated. Like, just look at this old inventory. Like, I feel it's showing parts that are not even available in the game. Like, what kind of tool is this over here? But I mean, generally, the instructions still kinda hold up, but I would really appreciate a makeover of this one, because it is just really outdated by now. It's more or less, like, useless in my opinion. The antenna pieces are also okay. Now, the traffic cone is a really cool part because, you know, it belongs on the streets. I do like the Sunshake Adder a lot too, which leaves us with the vacuum pump, and I really like this thing, because it allows for automation in Scrap Mechanic, and I really hope they're gonna add more in terms of automation with Chapter 2. Yeah, here's just a bunch more building parts. Also this old wooden crate. Now, these lights are alright. The water bucket is probably the most useful bucket. Okay, I don't think there's any water nearby. But not only can you use it to water crops, you can also stun haybots with it. The water cannon is like a vacuum pump, except that you can only shoot water with this thing. I guess the advantage is that you don't need a pipe connection to shoot water. I mean, it's also slightly cheaper. Same goes for the water container, so I mean, I guess those are alright. Now, the weld tool is pretty amazing though. Like, just being able to weld stuff together so you can use two bearings just opens up the game to a bunch more possibilities. Now, this wheel is actually round, so of course it's pretty good. Now, the wok is definitely my favorite animal in this game. Maybe because it's sponsored by Sunshake. But yeah, it looks weird and interesting with the udder on top. And there's also interesting wok lore, such as this wok crate. Oh my god, this looks so creepy. But as this is my favorite animal, this definitely gets on top of the list. While the wok crate is a little bit too creepy in my opinion. The wok meat is alright though. So the wood blocks can be really good to build boats. I mean, a wood block level 3 has even more buoyancy than bubble plastic. So that's definitely a really good block for boats. The other wood blocks are kinda mediocre though. So I think if I'll just move these wood pieces up here, I'm finally done with the tier list of every item in Scrap Mechanic. I think almost every. It's so big. Well, I'm gonna leave a link in the description for you too, so you can make your own tier list.